Hi, I'm Jamie Roostan. I work for Futureheads Recruitment. I am on the engineering team at Futureheads. This is part 2 of my ADHD journey video. Obviously everyone has their different learning styles, but I think for me, I have a very specific way of learning, and depending on basically how I am that day, depends on how I need like information to be relayed to me, or how basically how I get on with my day and do things. So sometimes I'll need someone to relay information by doing it with me, or just by telling me something very specific. I have to work against very militant structure, and basically that's helped me then basically challenge the processes in like my current business, like my current company that I work for, because I've had to learn and adapt and understand that depending on how I'm doing that day depends on how I need to information and how I need to follow processes to be different. And then like for instance as well, like sometimes for me to do active listening, I have to draw at the same time, because if I'm not doing something, then I'll get distracted by something else. So if I'm drawing, I'll be able to actively listen. But that was quite difficult as well for people to understand at first. And without explaining that, I think sometimes it can come across as I'm being rude or I'm not listening. But in fact, it's the complete opposite. And basically, I just need to adapt processes and things slightly differently, but I will still end up with the same result. Basically my whole life I'm masked. So like masking is basically where you are trying to pretend to be neurotypical, I guess. So for me to actively listen, maybe I wouldn't draw because I think that I was worried that people might think that I'm being rude. So what I would do was I would play with a hairband. You basically are trying to dim down your true self, to basically be like a neurotypical person. And I've pretty much done that my whole life, up until recently, and now I can be my true authentic self. So I've always had to like follow normal processes, normal standards. I've always, like if someone was set, like even at school, if we were set a task to do, I need really specific step-by-step or really specific questions or tasks relayed to me. I overthink, and then the result of that is it takes so much longer for me to actually complete it. Having hurdles like attention, focus, prioritisation, organisation, not being able to do something and going into paralysis because it's not of interest to me. Having to try and overcome everything like that just to be normal or neurotypical, I think that's how I've basically had to adapt. So I think learning or understanding your own neurodiversity is really important to get the best out of you. There's that saying, a jack of all trades is a master of none, and that's kind of where it stops. Most people think it's a negative saying, but the whole quote is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. And I think that is ADHD, or my ADHD, summed up perfectly. I absolutely love the fact that I know a lot, or I know a little about a lot of things. I love going to a quiz and knowing what a random sea creature is. It's just, yeah, I think that's how, you know, it can help me get ahead. When I went to last went to a meetup group about ADHD, they had a board where basically everyone could send in their answers about what they thought their superpower was, and pretty much everyone had wrote that they were empathetic. So being super empathetic, understanding people's emotions, understanding people's circumstances, situations, a lot of the time with ADHD, your emotional intelligence is also extremely high. I think as well, another thing, when the dopamine hits, it's really good to that you can get a task done really quickly when the dopamine hits, because you're like, I want to get this done and I really want to complete this, and the feeling of completing something when you've been so interested in it is such a good feeling. So when you know that you've got that at the end of it, you can complete things like twice as quickly as others. What gives me the irk, I guess, is people changing goalposts when it comes to how people want to refer to neurodiversity or what's being taught about it. I think as hard as it is for people with neurodiversity to live with it, it has its ups, but it definitely has its downs too. I think, like, I've been seeing a trend recently saying that neurodiversity isn't a superpower, and we need to be realistic about the downsides that comes with it. There are definitely downsides, and I'm not glorifying having ADHD. I think it can just be both though, and it doesn't need to be this hard line of it was a superpower and now it's not. Because for me, it certainly does still feel like that. I don't want to feel like I'm not allowed to feel like it's a superpower. And I also think for neurotypicals, we went through this whole phase of saying, you know, it is like being neurodivergent is a superpower. Okay, so neurotypicals caught onto that, was like, yeah, that's great, you've got a superpower, I'm happy to, you know, understand what we need to do to help you. And then all of a sudden to then say it's not a superpower and that it's actually really hard to live with. No one's saying it's not. I just think as well it's hard for then someone who's neurotypical to, one, understand how to approach someone who's neurodivergent, and it doesn't really feel like we're creating a safe space for people to ask questions, because it feels like the goalposts are always changing. It's allowing yourself to be who you are. Don't mask, feel those feelings, understand what you need, give yourself time and space to understand your neurodiversity, how it affects you, what you need support in your day-to-day, and it's absolutely fine to always ask for help. Understand, like, what I'd say the biggest thing is for me is like researching, and when researching or going to events or meetup groups, for someone to say something and then I'd be like, oh, I do that too, I didn't realise that was a part of it. It feels really nice to be a part of something and know that sometimes if I do something unique or act a certain way because of a certain situation or act differently in a certain scenario, it's most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's because of my ADHD. Just basically really trying to understand what you need, and surround yourself with other people that are there to support you whilst you're going through this, because speak to other communities or other like neurodiversity communities. There's lots of meetup groups you can go to, and you know, if you've been diagnosed even as a child or an adult, I'm always here, and my DM's always open. So yeah, sometimes it can be quite hard going through your journey on your own.